Munchkins and viewers alike, it's me Munchie, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about aggressive dwarf hamsters and what if you have one. So there's not really much information online about aggressive dwarf hamsters and what to look out for, but I've been getting a lot of comments from you guys saying, hey, my hamster does this, does that mean it's aggressive? What do I look out for? And really there's no video addressing it. There's videos out there that say taming a scared hamster or getting your hamster to stop biting you, but people don't know what an aggressive hamster truly is. So I have a disclaimer. So this is my research and observation as to what I believe aggressive dwarf hamsters to be. And I highly recommend if anybody wants to look further into this to please do your own research. Today's reason why I'm sharing is because there is such a lack of information out there, and maybe this could help someone out there. Because if I wasn't rescuing and fostering these dwarf hamsters, I would probably never have known what aggressive dwarf hamsters are like. I wouldn't think this was normal. First question, and it's the most common question, what is the symptoms of aggression? So the symptoms of aggression is usually them lunging at you and chasing you around their enclosure. Usually if a hamster is approaching you, they should be approaching you with caution. They should be sniffing around, making sure you're okay. If you have a bond with your hamster, usually your hamster trusts you enough to come up close to you and sniff you and check you out. However, an aggressive dwarf hamster will usually spot you, zoom over, and start lunging at you with their hands in the air, with their mouth open, and or they will just chase you around the enclosure in a very frantic-like behavior, which is not okay. It is not normal behavior. If they get a hold of you, they can also bite you, as well as they can bite anything that you are trying to interact with in their enclosure and place. Like say, for example, if you're trying to move the wheel, some of these hamsters will actually go and attack the wheel as you're trying to interact with it because they have this problem. So the hamsters in question will grow up to be environmentally unstable because of what happens in their environment, and or it could also be something that happens neurologically when getting passed down from the parents. So the next question is, what is cage aggression, and is it the same as this type of aggression seen in dwarf hamsters? They are very similar, have similar symptoms. However, cage aggression usually indicates a hamster that is showing signs of getting progressively worse, where they used to be able to be approached and handled. Now you're noticing that their behaviors are different. It's a gradual thing. When they are given a small enclosure, they become territorial, which they can become territorial to, say, another hamster in the enclosure, because dwarfs can be paired. I don't recommend it personally, but they can be. And or they get very territorial towards the owner that keeps them. So this tends to happen over time versus happening right when they are born and they start growing up. But you guys will probably hear more often than not people use cage aggression as the same as what you see in dwarf hamsters. But they can technically be different, but they do exhibit the same problems. But usually cage aggression starts with the environment versus behavioral aggression that starts at birth or when they're growing up at a very young age. Is it only in dwarf hamsters? As far as I can tell, it is not in Syrians, DJs, or Robos, and I have not had the pleasure of interacting with a Chinese hamster before, so I can't tell you for sure about them and their behavior, but definitely for just Campbell's Russian dwarf, I have seen the most amount of behavior issues in them. And the weirdest part is these hamsters are from Petco. I have had the pleasure of caring for 3 aggressive dwarf hamsters. The first one was Daisy last year, and her previous owners told me they got her originally from Petco only a couple months before they had to move and get rid of her. And then the other 2 hamsters I actually pulled from Petco because they were too aggressive and they were in the adoption program. What if my hamster is paired with the aggressive hamster and is doing just fine? Well, even though they're doing just fine now, that aggressive hamster could cause the other hamster to become very stressed and may even start to cause behavioral issues in that hamster. Honestly, if you do happen to have one hamster that's bad and one that's good, just as a precaution, I would recommend separating them now instead of letting them continue to live out their days, because you might accidentally endanger your other hamster. When tensions become too high, territory becomes an issue, and then maybe the aggressive will attack the other one and vice versa. You may never know. So preventative care is the best type of care. And I know you can pair dwarfs together, but just like I said before, I don't advise it. I don't like doing that myself. If I ever did come into possession of 2 dwarf hamsters from one of my rescues, I would definitely evaluate the situation situation and be like, maybe I should separate you guys. And don't worry guys, they do fine alone. I guarantee you they'll be perfectly fine if you happen to separate them. So how can you work around your aggressive hamster? Well, unfortunately, you'll have to come to the conclusion that you're never going to be able to handle your hamster the way you could normally handle any other hamster. With taming and bonding, you won't be able to achieve that because aggressives will not change. No matter how much taming sessions you put into it, they're still going to have this behavior. So you will have to work around them. You would have to make sure that you distract the hamster in one area of the enclosure and then place things in the other or move stuff out. And then when it gets time to cleaning, you might have to lure your hamster into its carrier and then place them in there. So no touching of the fingers unless possibly you're wearing bite gloves. However, I was wearing bite gloves when I was trying to handle Spitfire, and Spitfire bit right through them. So I don't know how successful you would be if you were wearing bite gloves all the time, and or if your hamster did happen to escape and you're trying to get it to safety. That might be very difficult, so you might have to think about that a little bit. So how long do they typically live for? Considering that these guys have this issue and they have high amounts of stress, unfortunately they might live a shorter life than say any other hamster that is in a relaxed, enriching environment. Hamsters are very weak creatures. They are prone to stress-related issues, and aggressive hamsters that constantly are seeing you at their enclosure getting stressed out at you, start scratching at the enclosure, trying to get at you through it. That's gonna stress them out and that's gonna cause issues. So one hamster that I was caring for, his name was Oscar. He had something wrong with him and he was supposed to be about a year old, and he unfortunately did pass away. Versus the other hamster, which is still my care, Spitfire, she is almost nearing a year old and she's looking just fine without any problems. But one thing you can do is, if you want to observe your hamster to make sure it's healthy, to just go ahead, lure it into a clear carrier and then hold the carrier so you can see all sides of their body, look underneath, and to see if the hamster is okay. If you would need to take in your aggressive hamster to a vet, make sure first to warn your vet that it's an aggressive hamster so they know what they're in for. Not telling your vets that it's aggressive is probably going to jeopardize both the hamster and your vets will probably not like you, and sometimes vets might not even want to see an aggressive hamster, although I've never heard of that before, but that is also another possibility you must be considerate of. Now, the last thing is really upsetting, but I hear it all the time, especially when people online ask me for advice. There has been people that say, what am I gonna do with my aggressive hamster? I don't want it anymore. It's causing me and my family problems. Now, that's really hard to hear because you want to do what's best for the hamster and you want to do what's best for yourself. So you have a bit of a dilemma here. So let me try to explain to you guys what you could do in case you really cannot keep an aggressive dwarf hamster. First, I would ask you to understand its needs and then to see if you can work something out and see if you can work around your aggressive hamster rather than try to get rid of it. But if you really must rehome it, please do not send it back to the same place you got it from. So if you just recently purchased your hamster from a pet store and it turns out the pet store employee did not know it was aggressive because they are not around the small animals, they're just trying to sell you a hamster, and unfortunately they think this is normal behavior when giving it to you and will think nothing of it. This is not normal behavior. So if you were that person that I just described in this scenario where somebody gave you an aggressive hamster and they're like, oh, it's fine, it's just nervous, it'll be all right when you get home, what you can do is not return it to that pet store. Please do not return it, and please instead look online, look at rescues and shelters, ask if they take in and or are aware of aggressive dwarf hamsters, and if they are, you can surrender there, and or you can go on to rehoming Facebook groups or classified ads asking people, hey, I have an aggressive dwarf hamster, I want it to go to somebody who is knowledgeable. And you can also quiz people inquiring if they absolutely know what an aggressive dwarf hamster needs, because sometimes people use aggressive dwarf hamsters as snake food. So please be aware of that. If anybody is rehoming a problematic hamster, whether it be a Syrian, a dwarf, a robo, if anybody is listening that this hamster has a behavior issue, unfortunately that does draw a lot of unwanted attention because the people use you because you want to get out ASAP, and they use you to get a free meal. So be aware of that. That is a possibility and scenario that I've actually seen play out before, which is awful. But of course, that's how some people are. They're just tricky little you want to look elsewhere instead of returning it back to that pet store which you purchased it from, because you don't want the cycle to continue. With Spitfire, she got returned multiple times before I was able to step in and pull her and place her within my care. So the hamster will get returned, then put up for sale, then bought, then returned, then put up for sale, and then bought again and returned, and it's just this horrible cycle. So please don't do that. I know possibly you might want your money back, but if you really care about this hamster, you would want to do what's best for it, not what's best for you. So just consider that. You might be wasting $15 to $20 on this hamster, but you are trying to guarantee this hamster goes off to a safe home. So please think about this before deciding to rehome your aggressive hamster, because I have had experience with 3 of them in my care and I just absolutely love their company. They're energetic little creatures. They have more energy than just a regular dwarf hamster that I have seen, just because of their behavior issues. But they do make great watch pets. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully this explains a little bit more about these types of behavior issues, and maybe we can open up a bigger discussion and more people can be open about, oh yeah, I've had aggressive dwarf hamsters before, and I've had this experience, or I've had this experience. So if you happen to have any sort of experience with an aggressive dwarf hamster, list them down below in the comments. And if you would like to see more videos from me, please subscribe and become a part of the Munchkin family to see more rescue and foster related content as well as hamster content. And if you liked the video, hit like to show support. I'll see you guys in another video, and thank you so much for tuning in. Bye bye!